Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another OPP Uniform Recruitment Ask Me Anything session. This probably the last one before Christmas and the whole season gets going. We're going to talk about a few different things today, kicking off before the questions start coming in. So my name is Reapplying. I'm one of the recruiters in East Region, and I'm joined here by Constable Marisol Primo as well from East Region. Just give you a quick little brief on myself. I've been with the OPP for 27 years. I've been with Uniform Recruitment since 2018. A lot of different roles I've done in my OPP career. Worked with the community, court officer, motorcycle operator, radar LiDAR instructor, all the different roles of detachment that you can do. I work with the auxiliaries, the media, a lot of fun things. So a little bit about who I am. And before we get into some other like little news things, Marisol, if you want to say hi.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name's Marisol Primo, and I've been with the OPP now almost 21 years, and kind of like my colleague here, Real, done all kinds of things within the organization. In addition to working frontline policing, I was a crisis negotiator, peer support team member, a member of the provincial liaison team. So, you could talk to literally hundreds of officers, and they would all have a little bit of a different story about their career trajectories and things they've done, which is a great thing about this organization. So glad to have you all here today.
All right. So a few things I mentioned. This is our last Ask Me Anything session before Christmas holidays. And I just want to touch a little bit about the OPP program, the Festive Ride program that the OPP launched in November. That's going to go through all the way till January 1st. And we're just trying to keep the roads safe for everybody. Through this time of the year, there's a lot of extra gatherings, whether workplace parties or extra festive dinners and a few drinks here and there with family, friends, and whoever that you want to get together with. And it's very important to plan your outing, your evening, your afternoon regarding how you're going to get home and get home safely for yourself and for everybody else using the road. If you plan on drinking, please, by all means, make plans, have somebody else drive. There's Uber drivers and other companies out there that do all that, taxis as well. Please take advantage of those. Some communities have the Red Nose program, which is a volunteer-based program that'll get you home. Please, if you decide to go somewhere and you weren't drinking and you had a few, please change your plans and make sure that everybody has a safe season this year.
And since we're talking kind of about the festive season, I thought it would be a great idea to touch on community service and community engagement. And as some of you might already know, that is a really important aspect of our areas of assessment when it comes to applying to the OPP. We really want to see what is your engagement with your community, because that's what policing is all about. It is about service to the public and the communities. So this might be a great time of year to get involved maybe with a food bank or some kind of clothing drive or some kind of holiday related event where you're able to get engaged with the community. Because when it comes to community service, what we like to see, it's not so much that we're looking for hundreds and hundreds of hours. It might just be a couple hours a month here and there that you're able to do, but only going to be an asset when it's to recruiters looking at your application. And it'll be an asset to you when it comes to talking about leadership skills and interacting with different members of the community, different populations. You will gain so much from it, in addition to just that feeling of satisfaction helping your community.
Yes, and the community is widespread. I used to be a community service officer. Actually, I was the last one at the Ottawa detachment. And it's funny because it is a traffic detachment. A lot of people think that, we don't have a community there because the city of Ottawa looks after the city itself and the residences and businesses there. But the 417, the 416, the highway is going through the city. Our community was the whole city of Ottawa as well. So we're connected to everybody across the province. Doesn't matter where your detachment is. There's always people coming in, traveling within our OPP detachment areas. Questions have started coming in. Sorry, unless you had something else. Okay, so questions are starting to come in, which is good. Please send whatever questions you have. We'll try to answer as many as we can in our time here. Si vous avez des questions en français du tout, je peux répondre en français aussi, alors n'hésitez pas d'envoyer vos questions françaises. Somebody's asking which section I should submit my reference letters. Not sure exactly what that's pertaining to, but I'll just touch a little bit on references. So when you submit your application, we have our new portal now. Instead of sending in an emailed bulk application where you attached documents into that document, now you can attach within the portal. You should try to address different areas of assessment. In other words, maybe you can have 2 to 4 different references, but that can touch either learning and development. So it could be school or people that have taught you something or looked after that can address your ability to learn. It could be a work reference, a character reference, maybe somebody from volunteering that you have that can speak about your character from there, and your character regarding how they see you and the fit for you in being a police officer. So 2 to 3 at that point. Should you get invited to an interview, you'll be asked to submit 3 character references, 3 work references or employment references, and 3 learning and development references. So it doesn't have to be necessarily just from school. Some of our candidates have been away from school for a while, or some might be in university where there's lots of large classes where the professors don't always know who every student is. So anybody that can speak to your ability to learn, whether that's a teacher, somebody that's trained you at work in your volunteer work, somebody that can address on how you learn, and are you a teachable person? Can you retain information? That kind of thing. And those 9, or let me just change it the other way. Any references that you provide in your application initially can be used as one of the 9 as well. So hopefully that answers your question regarding references.
So there's a question here. What are the main duties of a recent graduate officer or a new recruit to the OPP? So once you've gone through all of your training and graduated from the Ontario Police College and the OPP Academy, you report to your first day at your detachment and meet your coach officer and your platoon. And really the answer to that, what are the main duties? It's everything. You're learning so much at that stage. Everything you've learned in theory and classroom and doing scenarios, it's now the real thing. And so you kind of need to be like a bit of a sponge where you just soak it all up. Expect at times to be overwhelmed and maybe out of your comfort zone, but that's to be expected. And your coach officer and the rest of your platoon are there to help you through it. Your role is to really just be as receptive and open as possible to learning, coming into work with that beginner's mindset where every day you're going to learn something and do your best to retain it, and just be a really positive, professional individual, and the rest kind of falls into place. Some of it comes quickly. Some of it, officers will say it might take a couple of years before you feel like you feel confident that you can handle just about anything, because for the first little while, there's a lot of new stuff every day. So that's the challenging part, but I think it's the fun part that we all kind of embrace as police officers.
And work with as many different officers as you can in the beginning, and try to get a little bit of how everybody does things, and eventually you'll develop your own way of doing things and establish your kind of go-to way of dealing with things. So somebody's touched base here on the auxiliary program. They have a few questions within their block of questions. So they're asking, one, is there fitness requirement for auxiliaries? No, there is no fitness requirement to apply to the program. You'll get a chance to do the PIN test and training, but other than that, you do not have to have a fitness requirement to join the auxiliary program. So do you have to wait for an opening in your area's detachment to be hiring? So there has to be an opening within that detachment. From my experience, people were applying, and we did testing and interviews as we had positions opening. So just apply there, and they may be able to tell you if they're hiring or when they may be hiring, and have an idea from there. The other question is, does being an auxiliary officer make a significant difference during your application process being an officer? So it can, in the way of you're developing a lot of experiences and training that a lot of other applicants may not have access to. In other words, if you get chosen to become an auxiliary, there's a week training in Aurelia, and there's monthly training, and monthly ride-alongs that you can attend with different officers on the road, and also community service that you'll deal with. Yearly, you'll get first aid training, use of force training, firearms training as well. So a lot of those skills, that training, that is above and beyond with what many other candidates will get and be able to raise their competitiveness. And I say it that way because it's not an automatic stepping stone that if you're an auxiliary, that you can just kind of apply and transfer in to being a constable. You have to apply to the process like everybody else, go through the same screening. There's no jumping from one step to the next. However, you develop a lot of different skills and experiences in being able to go out on the road with officers and get some of that OPP training. And we have our in-house e-learning that we call it. So different online training courses that you can take. So that will develop you some of those skills, that motivation to become a police officer, and you really get to see what policing is actually about. I have a fun term that I've kind of made up called Hollywood policing. And unfortunately, some people apply to be a police officer based on what they see on television and the movies, and that's just not accurate in any sense. So finding out exactly what this job and career is as being part of the auxiliary program really helps to develop you. And on the flip side of that is that we get to see who you are as a person, as a potential officer as well, how you deal with public, how you deal with your notes, and you may have to submit reports, and you'll help officers take statements, directing traffic, things like that. You can assist as you develop your skills. So it's a great opportunity and really raises your competitiveness within your organization and within your process.
Question here about maybe what is the benefit of choosing the OPP and joining the OPP versus a municipal police force in Ontario? So there's a number of really great things, in my opinion, about the OPP. One of them, in the name, Ontario Provincial Police, it means that you have the opportunity to serve throughout the province of Ontario. And so that means within the OPP, we've got well over 50 detachments. We're broken into 6 different regions. And so you have that opportunity to choose whether you're more interested in rural, smaller communities versus maybe urban centers. And, if you like traffic enforcement, you have that opportunity to make those choices in terms of where you want to live and raise a family and have a career. Also within the organization, there are so many opportunities once you've gained that experience working the front line to maybe specialize in different areas. Either at detachment, we've got different specialty areas, but then as full-time positions, we also have specialized units as well. So once you've kind of developed your areas of interest and you know where your strengths lie, you might decide you're interested in, criminal investigations, or you might decide you're into forensics or mobile surveillance. There's just so many opportunities that municipalities might not offer you. And then the other opportunity as well, I think Real touched on it a bit, is we just offer so much in-house training that keeps you really current and up to date. Anything else that really stands out for you, Real, in terms of what makes the OPP maybe the police service of choice versus maybe going out for a municipal police service?
I think you kind of mentioned the different opportunities because we're across the province of different areas where you want to potentially live and base yourself based on family and interests, that kind of thing. And that's what we have so much training, so many different specialty units. And sometimes if you're willing to relocate, those opportunities can potentially come sooner because there's not always openings in wherever you are, but other regions might have those openings. So that helps there. I am going to do one quick question and get into another one here. So somebody's asking what the dress code is for a virtual local focus interview. Yes, our interviews are still virtual. That being said, just because it's virtual doesn't make it unofficial or unprofessional in any way. You will get notified, but the interview, whether it would ever be virtual or not, and they all are right now, is business attire. Full business, suit, tie, dress shirt, all that. Just because it's virtual, gone are the days of the early pandemic pajama meetings and all that stuff that we used to see on YouTube and those funny things. Everything is official now. Just because it's virtual doesn't make it less important or less professional. So full business attire from there. So the other question I was jumping into, should you submit your application now? Would there be a chance to be in the March class? So I get similar question. The other question I get is like, when's the best time to apply? All right. So the best time to apply is when you're at your competitive best. In other words, you can submit your application at any time throughout the year. Okay, there's no specific hiring window, but you have to make sure that you're competitive in all the areas of assessment. Okay, and you have to self-assess yourself based on your preparedness, coming to these sessions, attending information sessions, or viewing them online if it's a virtual one, and then decide. Do not rush into an application based on, I want to get into this class. Because at some point in the process, depending how things go and other things that we have to manage, you'll lose control of that, okay? In other words, you just apply when you're ready and let things take place in that process as it may be. We are going to be in a bit of a learning position this year, going from 3 intakes to 4. We have a targeted goal at that point. I think it's 120 per class. So just make sure that you're at your competitiveness and let everything else fall into place at that point. Because sometimes if you wait a little bit, develop yourself, okay, you might be able to be a little bit more successful and get through the process rather than rushing. And then at any stage, if you're not successful, you cannot reapply for a year for when you get notified. So please don't rush. Sometimes it's better to take a short amount of time, maybe a few months, to prepare yourself and hopefully you're successful rather than rushing into it and have to wait a year.
Question here in terms of, so when you're working at detachment, when you first graduate and you're a new recruit at detachment, how long before you can move into, for example, a specialty unit? And the answer to that, typically it takes about 5 years just to get to that stage where you would even be competitive enough to apply for one of those positions, because although there are those opportunities, they still are very competitive and there is a process. And so really, realistically, it takes a number of years before you're going to be competitive enough to apply to any of those. So typically it would be about 5 years before you'd be considering applying to any of those and have any chance of being really competitive, whether it be a specialty unit or, for example, a promotion. That does come with just time and experience.
Somebody's asking if the EPO process, which is experienced police officer process, slowed down during the month of December, particularly to backgrounds. Not really. Like, we have to fill the class. I think the next EPO class is February, if I'm not mistaken. So regardless with the Christmas holidays or not, we have to process to fill that class in February. And then in March, we have the recruit class. So we just deal with the work that needs to be done and get through it as best you can. If you feel that there's a delay in the process, please just be patient with us and we'll get through from there, depending on when you applied and when was your last contact or last part of the stage that you went through. If you don't mind, I'll just jump on another one that's quick. For the cadet program, would obtaining an OACP certificate make you look more competitive? So I'll answer that regarding a cadet application or a constable application. So it is not required for either or to have your Ontario Association Chief of Police certificate. But if you have it or want to get it, by all means, yes, you can put it in your application. It'll be an enhancement to your file. The one benefit is that should you come through the interview and come to background, and at that point there's a medical assessment, we do vision and hearing testing. If your certificate is still valid at that time, then we would take those results there so you don't have to go back to the community and pay a second time to get those tests. We'll take that as long as your certificate is valid. So no, it's not required to apply, unlike the old ATS testing that we used to have, but it's an enhancement to your file.
With respect to community service, there's a question here: is there some advantage, or maybe does it is it looked upon more favorably if community service is done related to, fire, police, EMS, that sort of thing. And certainly those are, if there are options for you to do that kind of volunteering, where maybe you're a volunteer in a scenario or you're a volunteer firefighter, something like that. Certainly those are great options, but that is not exclusively what we're looking for. We're really looking for any kind of community service where you're getting engaged in your community. So we see things like people coaching. So it might be coaching on even their own children's sports team. It might be volunteering at your place of worship. It could be volunteering at a shelter, a soup kitchen. It might be helping out your elderly neighbor with snow removal. There are literally so many organizations and individuals that are seeking help and your time that it's really up to you to choose what speaks to you and where you feel you have the most to offer. So we just encourage people to be getting out in their communities and doing something, whatever is available to you within your time restrictions. If you're raising a family, going to school, we recognize that your time is maybe a bit limited, but do what you can, certainly.
So I have a quick one and a little bit more detailed one. So where does auxiliary training take place? In Aurelia, general headquarters in Aurelia. And the other questions, and the recruit training will be for constables. There's a week in Aurelia, and then there's your whole section at the Ontario Police College, and then you come back to Aurelia GHQ for another 8-week session. So what character qualities are recruiters looking for in applicants during the interview process? So good question. So what we do, so I had a past colleague that said the smartest person in the room at the interview is the candidate, because the questions are all about you, the candidate. So you're going to have all the answers. The things that we're looking for are all going to be developed type questions where we just dig into those areas of assessment to find out more about you. Okay. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for people that are competitive in those areas, but also within the context of that interview, we're looking to see that you meet the values that the OPP is striving to achieve to serve the community in Ontario. So if you go on our website, the OPP values, the mission is there. That's what we're looking for in our candidates. So you can gear things that you've done, your incidents in and around those traits there, and we'll discuss that as we get through. And in touching on the interview, there was another question here about, is there more than one interview, or an ECI, which is essential competency, or LFI? So we have what we call LFI, local focus interview, which is there are questions about you in those areas of assessment. However, we will ask you some competency-based questions as well as part of that interview. It's not two separate interviews. It's just part and parcel to one interview session at that point. So values of the OPP, areas of assessment, that's what we look for in the LFI. Okay. And that'll, if you're prepared there and being honest, then you should be able to get through it pretty good if you're well prepared and competitive enough.
Two quick questions here. So one being, if you already have CPR training and use of force training, is it mandatory? If you have level C CPR and your first aid training and it's still valid, then we will accept that. Use of force training, that is something that you will have to qualify with when it comes to the Ontario Police College and the OPP Academy. So we have our own training. So certainly you will have to qualify in that. But when it comes to applying, your CPR training, if it's valid, will be accepted. And then there was a question here when you're completing your application and the section regarding work history. If you've had a number of jobs and maybe some of these are fairly dated, and you don't know the email and phone numbers of supervisors, what do you do? Well, you have to exhaust every opportunity, every method of finding that information. So if the business still exists, then you need to contact the business and at least be able to provide us with some sort of contact, phone number and email of someone that we would be able to contact. because if you make it to the background investigation, then the investigator will be following up with all of these places of employment. So we expect this is kind of your first this is your first step as an investigator, and doing your own investigation into yourself and doing a bit of digging is finding all of that information for us so that we don't have to do it for you, because the background investigator won't. And then your file will be delayed. So best that you do all the work at the front end of your application so that we're not asking you to do things moving forward. It doesn't look good on you, and it slows down your file.
Okay. So somebody's asking here, do applications to other police services impact your application to the OPP at all? So in general terms, no. Okay. There's more to this. So we understand that candidates will be applying or have applied to other police services. Some candidates that were not successful in other places may be successful with us, and vice versa. If not with us, maybe with others. And that could be for a lot of different reasons. It could be maybe at the time they applied to one service, they weren't as competitive. They've taken some time to develop and become competitive with another service. So it's not necessarily viewed negatively that you've applied elsewhere. We verify some of that information as well in your process. So when you're asked about it, please be honest, just like you should be with anything else throughout the process. Be honest about past applications. And then we'll talk about why you can tell us why you were not successful. Okay. And it's a good idea to self-assess after any process you're involved in to see where you can identify those traits or those weaknesses that maybe stopped you from proceeding, and how you've been able to develop yourselves in some of those areas or some of those things that were lacking to make yourself more competitive. So it's not necessarily looked negatively upon, but use those experiences to make yourself competitive for the processes that you are in.
Question here, how long after submitting your online application should you expect to hear from a recruiter? So what happens when you submit your application through our online portal? The first thing that happens when we receive it is we assign to you a file number, and then you receive instructions about submitting a video showing yourself completing the 20-meter shuttle run, and you need to be able to attain at least a level 7 on the shuttle run. So we will not process your file any further until we receive your shuttle run. So that's really the first thing before you even hit submit and submit your application to us, is make sure you've tried the shuttle run so that you know whether you're able to reach level 7. Because if you're not, that will halt your file. You'll be given 3 months to try to get to level 7. If you're not able to in that 3 months, then your file will be closed and you can reapply in 1 year. But really, as Constable Levac said, you should be applying when you know you're ready. And so the fitness is a huge component of your readiness. And it just really looks a lot better when you submit your application if you're able to reach level 7 on the shuttle run. So that's what will happen. You'll be given instructions in terms of how to complete this and submit it to us. And assuming you're able to reach level 7 on the shuttle run, then we will screen your application and determine whether you meet all of the minimum qualifications and determine whether you're a competitive candidate, at which point then you'll potentially be given an interview. So that could take a couple weeks. We're pretty quick right now and efficient at processing all of those. So it could be a matter of 2 to 3 weeks. It depends on candidates and scheduling, but at the beginning, it moves fairly quickly. So when you hit submit on that application, be ready to go, because we might start asking you for a lot of things.
Yeah. Somebody's got an interesting question too, is they're in the process with the OPP and you receive a court subpoena as a witness, and if that would affect their application. So no, it will not have. So receiving you have a responsibility that whatever incident you're involved in, you're a witness, you have to attend court. That's what we do as a police officer, right? So yes, you have to attend court. That in itself will not affect your application. The only thing that I kind of put a little catch-22 to that is, depending what the incident you're involved in, if there's anything negative that you were part and parcel to, that could be an issue. But if you didn't have any type of negative police involvement regarding that incident. You just happen to be a witness to either like an assault that you saw or a collision of sorts or something like that, then no, that won't affect your application. You do have a responsibility that you have to attend that to attend that court. Quick one here. When's the fourth class going to take place? So the new schedule that we have is going to be March, June, September, and December are going to be the 4 intakes for the new process as opposed to the 3 that we've had.
Question here regarding academics and high school. So a minimum requirement is that you have your Ontario Secondary School diploma or your grade 12 diploma. And if you have completed your education outside of Canada, then you do need to also provide equivalency documents. So that would be for high school and then college, university, any kind of academics. We also will need equivalency documents. And there's more about that on our website. If you go to opp.ca/careers, we do provide some links there.
Okay. So somebody's asking, what are the typical hours look like for a constable and how many days a week is one on duty? Most of the province has now got on to what we call the 5-4 schedule. So they're 12-hour shifts and you would work 4 or 5 days in a row and then sporadically get 4 or 5 rest days from there. You end up working a weekend of days, a weekend of nights, and then 2 weekends off. Okay, so that's kind of how it follows there without getting into daily specifics of that schedule. That's what most of the province is probably working now. And what are the areas of specialization that one can go into? Well, I think we can do probably a whole Ask Me Anything session just on that in itself. There is crazy amount of different types of specialties. I cannot name them all, but anything from like marine, motorcycle operators, snowmobile, ATVs, to investigative, forensic type things. There's so many emergency response. There's so many different areas that you can throw yourself into your career. And even within all those, there's management that you get into supervisory management roles from there. So there is not a shortage of specialties, and whatever your interests may be, just play around, check with our website. We touch about it a little bit on our information sessions as well. And there's a lot for you to do. However, keep in mind that you're not applying to any of these things. Whenever you're assigned to a detachment, you're there for a minimum of 3 years before you can ask for a lateral transfer to anywhere else or start applying to different specialty positions. There has to be an opening in those specialties for you to apply to it. It's not just an automatic transfer. And please keep in mind that you have to develop your skills to compete for these positions against other officers that may have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years of experience as well. So it's not a given that, I get my 3 years and then I can jump into here, there, wherever. Okay. It takes time. You have to develop your skills as a police officer to be able to do that.
Just a few short ones here. So someone's asking about the maximum age to apply, and there is no maximum age or cutoff age. The minimum age is 18 to apply, but there is no cutoff age. It really comes down to yourself and are you able to complete the requirements to apply? So can you get level 7 on the shuttle run? Do you meet all of the other minimum requirements? And then are you a competitive candidate when it comes to the other areas of assessment? That will be up to you to decide, but there is no maximum age. Then there was also a question regarding English skills. So one of the minimum requirements is that you must be proficient in English. So that is certainly spoken English, written English. And the reason why that's important and written English as well is because one of the things, like Rael was saying, there's Hollywood policing, right? And in Hollywood policing, you go call to call and there's no paperwork. I don't know what happens after the call. They don't tell you. But in real policing, there is a ton of paperwork. So after every call, depending what it is, you could expect hours of paperwork afterward. So you need to have strong English writing skills. Otherwise, that paperwork reflects you, particularly if it's a court document. As well, if you struggle with it, it might just take you a really long time to write these reports and compose them. So it is important to be very proficient, but certainly any other language skills that you have will be a huge asset in being a police officer, because our communities now are so diverse that other language skills will be really important too.
Okay. Somebody's asking, I'm just going to touch base a little bit here, OPP dispatcher position, what we're looking for. There is an interview, there's typing testing, multitasking type of test as well. As a dispatcher, you're doing a lot of different things on the phone, on the computer, dealing with a lot of stuff. Go on our website and have a look at that. But they're asking if you become successful as a position, work from home or in office. It's not just an office, it's in the communication center. We have 4 locations. There's Aurelia, London, Thunder Bay, and North Bay. Those are the 4 communication centers located throughout the province for the OPP. It would be one of those 4 locations. There is no work from home option as a dispatcher.
Once you apply, how long will your application be kept on file? So the way it works, we don't have a pool of applications that we keep. So once you apply, we file and process your application right away. If you're a competitive candidate, then you go through the process and you either make it to the very end and you're successful, or if not, if you're unsuccessful at a certain stage, your file is closed and you can reapply in 1 year. But the pile, it doesn't sit there in a pool. So really, your application gets processed as soon as we receive it.
Okay. So I'm going to mix a couple questions here. They're very similar. So somebody's asking, they're in the process with the military for military police, and if that would help their application. Somebody else has a similar question regarding corrections. So absolutely, those past experiences, I came from a corrections background. I worked federal corrections before I got onto the OPP. And I've interviewed people from corrections and from military members, MPs or not. So yes, it's improves your competitiveness, your experience you have dealing with certain people in certain situations within the community. So as an MP, you're dealing with police related, you're a police officer, you're dealing with calls. It's a jurisdictional thing. You're working your own jurisdiction outside of the OPP jurisdiction. So those are direct training, direct calls for service and experience that you deal. Corrections is similar as well. You're dealing with a certain percentage of population that we would deal with in the community doing our job. And there's different types of experiences that you develop there that are related into policing. So all those experiences absolutely would enhance your application and that competitiveness. Keep in mind that not everything in your application has to be related to policing. Okay. So just looking into the employment section, we're looking for that positive work history. Can you hold the job, do your job, do it well? Can you take direction? And that nice fine balance between can you work independently, but also be able to identify if you need help to ask for it. Okay. So we look at that in general, and then we can build from there and say, look, are you a mentor? Are you teaching? Are you a supervisor? What else are you developing within that? What kind of training are you getting in those jobs? So it's not necessarily just police related that we're looking for. We're looking for that positive work history in there. But anything that is related, absolutely, it's an enhancement to your file. Any type of emergency services will help from there.
A question here about offender transport unit and positions. So for really this session focuses on uniform recruitment, but for any of those positions that we would consider civilian positions, offender transport unit, please go to our website, opp.ca/careers, and there is a section there where you can look into things like the offender transport unit and determine whether you're a competitive candidate, submit your application. In terms of when they're hiring and how many people, I don't have that information. We don't do the recruiting process for the offender transport unit. Another question just regarding employment, and if a business is closed, what do you do with that on your resume? please still list it. We want you to list every job that you've ever had from the time you were in high school right up until the present moment, even if it was a short term or a part-time job. We do want you to list every position. If it's out of business, then you can indicate that on your application, certainly, but make sure you do include it.
Okay. Somebody's asking if there's a limit on how many times you can apply to the OPP. So no, there's no limit. Here's my catch. If you're applying many, many times, particularly in short order, and you're getting decline, I think you really need to reassess your application and your preparedness. We don't have a cutoff, but there's reasons why you're not successful, and you have to assess what those things might be. You may have potentially something negative in your past that we cannot deal with, and maybe some liability issues from there, and that might make you unsuccessful. Basically kind of like a skeleton in your closet type deal, something negative that we just can't, as an organization, accept somebody with a certain incident in their past. And that can be a number of different things. I'm not going to get into what those examples may be, but you should have an idea of yourself if you think there's something questionable in your past. Now, on the flip side of that, outside of that, you should be able to assess yourself. So in other words, attend an information session, view it, look at the areas of assessment that we have, and be honest with yourself and say, what competitive level do I feel? If I'm on a scale of 1 to 5 or 1 to 10, where do I feel I belong in that area? And if you can identify where you're weaker in some areas from there, then you have to develop that. So I think I mentioned earlier, at any time that you're not successful in the process, you cannot apply for another year. So it's designed so that you take that time to develop yourself from those areas that you were lacking. So I've seen files where a candidate gets invited to an interview, not successful in the interview, a year later applies and doesn't get invited to an interview the second time. Well, we compare those applications. We want to see how you've developed yourself since that last process. And if we see there's no improvement, well, what's going to change? If we invite you to interview, you're going to tell us the same thing. You haven't done anything to show us that you've developed and made yourself a more competitive candidate. So that's the key thing here. It's not so many times the amount of times that you apply. It's what have you done in between those applications to raise your level of competitiveness and really address those shortcomings that are stopping you from proceeding in the process.
So some questions here regarding volunteering and community service, which is good, because I think this is an area where sometimes people miss opportunities to develop themselves. But we do recognize a lot of our applicants are mature, where you're raising a family, you're working full time, and maybe you're going to school. So life is busy, right? And we certainly don't want people to miss out on time with their families, and you need to be managing things so that you're doing well in school and so on. So really what we're encouraging is that you take whatever volunteer opportunities come up that are doable for you. So if you're raising a family, maybe you have the opportunity to volunteer at your child's school or sports, where you're going to be with them anyway, so you're contributing in that way. Maybe there are small one-off community events that you're able to get involved in throughout the year. Or like I said, maybe it's a matter of helping a needy neighbor who needs help with chores around the house because they're limited in terms of their physical abilities. So we're just urging you to find whatever opportunities you can to fit them into your schedule. If you don't have community service, it does not necessarily mean that you're not a competitive candidate if you're really strong in the other areas. But generally, we can tell based on someone's academics and employment and everything that's going on in their life, whether maybe they're not using their time to do community service simply because they're not interested in doing it. So do what you can. That's the main message.
Somebody's asking the difference between HSD and other divisions. So we only have one division called Highway Safety Division, which is basically covers the GTA, the Toronto area, and the detachments there are traffic detachments. The other divisions, we don't call them, they're called regions. There's West and East region, Northeast, Northwest, and Central. So within those regions, outside of the Ottawa detachment, it's the one detachment outside of HSD that is the one and only traffic detachment outside of HSD. Other than that, they're what we call general duties detachment. And I think Marisol, you touched on this a little bit earlier about the duties of a police officer. That's where you're going to attend calls. You're going to do traffic enforcement. You're going to do some traffic enforcement, some speeding, investigate collisions. You'll do that as well. That's what HSD does on a regular basis. Impaired driving. They might come across some drugs in vehicles, things like that. But in general duties, you're going to do assaults and domestics and thefts and lost persons and all those different types of other types of investigations from there. So that's where the difference is between HSD and the other regions that we have. So it's a different type of work from general duties to strictly traffic related duties.
Question in terms of how to get involved with the OPP if you're still in school full time, but you're working toward the career. So there are a few opportunities. Of course, one of them that comes to mind right away is the auxiliary unit, because it's a volunteer unit, and your minimum commitment is 10 hours a month plus an additional 3 hours of training every month. So that might work out, and you're getting your exposure and volunteer hours that way. As well, there's the cadet program. We will probably be running that competition again sometime in the spring. It is very competitive, though. We get a huge response, which is great. We have a lot of people interested in it, but we don't have enough positions for everyone. But that's another one where if you're going to school, you can work a hybrid schedule where you work part-time during the school year and then full-time in the summer. So that's another opportunity you might keep an eye out for.
Okay. I'm going to answer two in one, and I think that might be see how long it takes, but maybe our last question for today. So it's related to education. So the first one's saying, asking if there's other courses other than police foundations that somebody can take to make them competitive. And the other one is, would continuing your education outside of police, if you're hired outside, would that be acceptable? So for education, you do not have to have police-related education. Just like I said earlier, you don't have to have police-related employment. Those add to your application. They make you more competitive. There's an enhancement to your file. What we're looking for education is the ability to learn. Okay, we want to know that if we send you to the Ontario Police College, are you going to pass? And we look at that through looking at your transcripts, speaking to any type of educational references. So it could be either your teachers, somebody that has trained you, volunteer work that has showed you the ropes, somebody that can speak about your ability to learn. Are you somebody that's teachable? Can you learn, retain information? And we look at that in general from there. Even some of the communication skills we look from that. That's how we assess education, so that we can satisfy ourselves that if we send you to the Ontario Police College, you'll be successful. And what we're looking for is that the Ontario Police College has a pass mark of 75% per class, not a general overall 75%. You need 75% minimum per class. Okay, so that's what we look for. Some people choose to finish their education before applying. Some people will put it on hold, or they'll do it during and accept a position they're not done, or sometime later in life you want to put yourself through other types of college, university courses. That's okay while you do that on the job. It is not a conflict of interest to continue to learn and develop. This job is all about learning. There's legislation's changed, technology has changed. We're always learning throughout our career. If you want to do that beyond the OPP itself and go to school, as long as priority will have to be you attending your shifts. So depending what your learning is, if it's in person or if it's virtual online learning, you're going to have to work that around your schedule to be able to attend. If you have to miss any work, you'll have to just apply for that day off, either on vacation or some other way that you can, if you have to write an exam or something like that. So no, you can keep going with your education. I don't think that would ever be turned down, Marisol, if somebody's working on developing themselves that way.
No, I don't think so.
That's huge there. So we talked a little bit about the Festive Ride program in the beginning. That brings on winter. Public service announcement. We've had a lot of rain here in Ottawa. Woke up today and it was white again. Please, in the winter, be safe. Drive according to conditions. Make sure your car has proper winter tires, slow down when need be, give yourself a lot more room around other vehicles, and in questionable weather, give yourself extra time. If you don't have to go out in some of those storms and whatnot, freezing rain and all that fun stuff, please don't. If you don't have to go out, don't go out. We want everybody to be safe for yourselves, your families during this time. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at OPP Careers. It's all one now. YouTube as well. Our website has a whole lot of information. And Marisol, is there anything else you want to add to that before I just keep rambling on?
No, I think you've touched on all the points. There's so much information out there. It's an exciting time to apply to the OPP, with the 4 classes a year starting in 2024 and hiring about 500 new officers next year. It's a great time to apply. So work on your application. Put the time into it, because as recruiters, we recognize when you've put in that time and that effort. We can tell. So please do, and apply when you feel ready, and hopefully you'll be working with us sometime in the near future. I want to wish everyone the best, and stay healthy and stay safe.